Winter let the maid style her hair, pulling the top half into a thick braid threaded with strands of gold and silver, and leaving the rest to cascade around her shoulders. She let the maid pick out a pale blue dress that grazed her skin like water, and a strand of rhinestones to accent her neck. She let the maid rub scented oils into her skin. She did not let the maid put any makeup on her, not even to cover the scars. The maid didn't put up much of a fight. "I suppose you don't need it, Highness," she said, bobbing a curtsy. Winter knew she had a sort of exceptional beauty, but she'd never before been given a reason to enhance it. No matter what she did, gazes would follow her down the corridors. No matter what she did, her stepmother would snarl and try to hide her envy. But since Jason had confessed he was not immune to her appearance, she'd been looking forward to this chance to dress up in new finery. Not that she expected much to come from it other than a heady satisfaction. She knew it was naive to think Jason might ever do something as crazy as profess his love for her, if he did love her at all, which she was confident he did. He must, after all these years. And yet, his treatment of her had had a distant quality to it ever since he joined the Royal Guard. The professional respect he maintained too often made her want to grab his lapels and kiss him, just to see how long it would take for him to thaw. No, she did not expect a confession or a kiss, and she knew all too well a courtship was out of the question. All she wanted was an admiring smile, one breathless look that would sustain her. As soon as the maid had gone, Winter peeked into the corridor where Jason stood at his post. "Sir Clay, might I solicit your opinion before we go to greet our earthen guests?" He waited 2 full breaths before responding. "At your service, Your Highness." He did not, however, remove his attention from the corridor wall. Smoothing down her skirt, Winter situated herself in front of him. "I wanted to know if you thought I looked sort of pretty today." Another breath, this one a bit louder. "Not funny, Princess." "Funny? It's an honest question." She bunched her lips to one side. "I'm not sure blue is my color." With a glower, he finally looked at her. "Are you trying to drive me crazy?" She laughed. "Crazy loves company, Sir Clay." "I notice you haven't answered my question." His jaw tightened as he returned his focus to some spot over her head. "Go look for compliments elsewhere, Princess. I'm busy protecting you from unknown threats." "And what a fine job you're doing." She tried to hide her disappointment as she headed back into her chambers, patting Jason on the chest as she passed. But with that touch, his hand gathered up a fistful of her skirt, anchoring her beside him. Her heart flipped, and despite all her bravado, Jason's piercing gaze made her feel tiny and childish. "Please stop doing this," he whispered, more pleading than angry. "Just leave it alone." She gulped and thought to feign ignorance. But no, ignorance is what she feigned for everyone else. Not Jason. Never Jason. "I hate this," she whispered back. "I hate having to pretend like I don't even see you." His expression softened. "I know you see me. That's all that matters, right?" She gave a slight nod, though she wasn't sure she agreed. How lovely it would have been to live in a world where she didn't have to pretend. Jason released her, and she slipped back into her chambers, shutting the door behind her. She was surprised to find herself lightheaded. She must have been holding her breath when he'd stopped her, and now... She froze a few steps into the sitting room. Her gut tightened, her nostrils filling with the iron tang of blood. It was all around her. On the walls, dripping from the chandelier, soaking into the upholstered cushions of the settee. A whimper escaped her. It had been weeks since she'd had one of the visions. None had haunted her since Jason's return. She'd forgotten the overwhelming dread, the swoop of horror in her stomach. She squeezed her eyes shut. "Jason?" Something warm splattered on her shoulder, no doubt staining the beautiful blue silk. She took a step back and felt the area rug squish wetly beneath her feet. "Jason!" He burst through the door, and though she kept her eyes pressed tight, she could imagine him behind her, weapon drawn. "Princess, what is it?" He grabbed her elbow. "Princess!" "The walls," she whispered. A beat followed by a low curse. She heard his gun being replaced in its holster. Then he was in front of her, his hands on her shoulders. His voice dropped, becoming tender and careful. Tell me. She tried to swallow, but her saliva was thick and metallic.